What is up, everybody? Welcome back. In this video, I want to find out where you guys are on our current photo assignment that's going on, which is photo assignment number 15. Before I get rolling into this, I do want to make mention of something I talked about a few weeks ago. I am now doing a podcast with my friend Jaron Schneider, who's an awesome guy. He's a writer over at Image Resource, and we've met at several events this year and decided to give this show a go. I mentioned it. It's finally up. It takes a while to get things into iTunes because you have to submit them and then they have to be approved, but it's finally up there. Now, the link is really weird and long, so I will put that in the show description. You guys can check it out. We will also be available on Stitcher and Spotify coming up soon. We're waiting on approval on those as well. But I'm really excited about this because Jaron and I, we decided to start this podcast. It's going to be a weekly thing that we do. It's an hour long, and it will dovetail in with this show somewhat. We're calling it Art of Photography Off Camera, and so it'll give us a forum to discuss things more in depth than what I do in these videos, which are typically in the 5 to 10 minute range. And so that gives us a longer format to discuss things. And our show this week is actually really interesting. We decided to talk about photo sharing and the fact that it used to be that you had Flickr and 500px and all of these outlets for exploring this whole idea of photo sharing. Those things have kind of not been cool lately. And what we're left with is Instagram and how that's a little bit one-dimensional at times. Anyway, it's an interesting discussion, and we would like you guys to get involved, and we're going to open it up to questions that we can answer as a segment in the show as well. So go check it out. I'm really proud of this. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it'll dovetail with this show in the coming weeks and months as we move forward. So super excited. Now, let's talk photo assignments. The current photo assignment is number 15, which deals with this thing we're calling Holga style. And essentially, what I did was I gave you guys a ton of restrictions. You can shoot whatever you want, but it's got to be at f8, 1/60th of a second, and then I gave you some choices in your ISO settings. And there's several ideas behind this. And the first one is to get you guys to understand exposure and how your camera's working and light and what you need at those restrictions. And that's the whole idea with shooting on a Holga, is that it only works in certain lighting conditions because you are limited with your aperture and shutter speed. Now, you can figure out things beyond that. I think I left ISO open, but if you need to use a higher speed film or something like that, if you're using a Holga, or with digital, it's just selecting a new gain setting. That's a possibility. Or, you could use ND filters, or there's ways to get around things. But one is to understand exposure and to get you guys to think about that. And then I think two, more importantly, is more of the creative side of things. And I mentioned this whole idea of giving ourselves permission to fail, which I think is extremely important. And speaking personally from my own creative development and things that I've done over the years, that's a really hard thing for me to do. I think it's a hard thing for a lot of people to do because there's something about failure. We don't want to fail. We want to succeed. We want to do great work. We want to strive for something awesome. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're not failing, then you're not making any mistakes to learn from. So that's a big deal, is giving yourself permission to just get out there and do weird stuff or stuff you're not used to doing, or shoot from the hip, or give yourself permission to fail, because then when you review your images and you look at your work, you're going to learn things from it, both positive and negative. I mean, on the negative side is obvious. It's like, oh, that's terrible. I don't want to do that again. But on the positive side, sometimes there's a happy accident involved. And in both situations, whether it's a positive or negative, you want to find a way to say, how do I not replicate that again, or keep from doing it if it's negative? And on the positive side, you want to say, oh, how do I reproduce this? How do I let this influence the direction that I'm going in? So I went online this morning, and because we share these using the hashtag, I pulled a couple examples, and I'm really impressed with the quality of work that's coming in. Apologies in advance. I hope I pronounce people's names right, but I want to share these with you because I think that they're really outstanding, and there's some really neat things that are going on here. So I want to start with this image, which I think is fantastic, and this is from Ian Timberlake, and obviously there's an element of surprise here. There's something unexpected or unusual. You've got an airplane flying over these towers. There's a little bit of motion blur in the plane. Possibly this is 1/60th of a second, or it was really hauling. But either way, it's an interesting image, and there's something fun going on with the composition. It was thought about. You have that element of surprise. A long time ago, I talked about Kearney Lartigue, who is long deceased, but he always had that element in his work early on in the early days. I mean, actually through his entire career. And I really like that, the whole idea of the snapshot or capturing something in action. And I think that's really, really well done. The second image that I want to show you, and this is from J Harrow, I believe is how I say this. Aaron did an incredible image here, and this is very off the cuff, very improvised, and very from the hip. But let me explain what works in this image and what I really like about it. So For me, photography, the interest in good photography for me lies in contrasts. And so that's not necessarily just contrast in light. That can be contrast in subject. That can be contrast in focus. That can be contrast in motion. It's a number of different things. And I think that's what you're seeing here. There's two contrasts. Your subject, I think, is the guys on the motorcycle that are speeding by, right? But they are obstructed by these figures in the foreground. Now, I don't think of them as the subject because that's the second thing I see when I look at this image, because one, they're darker in contrast, the more muted colors. Possibly this is an accident. Possibly it was improvised. I don't know how Aaron shot this, but I really like it. One, we have a lot of motion going on. We have the elements of surprise, and we have something very unusual. And this is a technique and a way of shooting or envisioning a composition that you could learn from and you could try to reproduce in your work again. And that's what we're going for on this. And this is a really successful example. Another one that I like, and Mick on the Lake is participated in a lot of these photo assignments, and I figured we'd see a lot of this, and I love this whole idea of abstraction. I did a video with my friend Matt Beatty when I was in Flagstaff, Arizona. And he had this method where we took an old Olympus digital camera and we put saran wrap over the lens to obscure what was going on with light. And so certainly that opens up possibilities for further abstraction for things that you could shoot through. And I like this. It's almost like an impressionist painting with just these globs of color that are blotted onto the canvas, so to speak. But it's not. It's a photograph, so it's your screen. But anyway, really nicely done. I think it's a very different take than the other work that we've seen. Another one that I really like, and it's more conventional, but it's just a really nice atmosphere and a mood that's set up. This is Tyler Burvey. There's a really cool atmosphere going on in this. It's very moody. You've got the mist. You've got the road, which appears to be somewhat wet. And I like the fact that not a lot of things in here are in focus. And I am going to guess that this might have been shot on a Holga or a toy camera because the sharpness and the resolution have that kind of plastic look to it, which I really like. And another reason that I've always loved the Holga and even Diana cameras for that matter. Anyway, really nicely done. And another thing that I want to talk about is the range of work that people are submitting for this. And here's a really simple still life that's just really beautiful. And this is Aaron Overstreet, and this is just really nice. It's well lit. It's nicely done. I don't think it's, a crazy daring image. It's definitely playing it safe. But again, it's understanding light and what you can do with this whole idea of Holga style and the restrictions that you have on your camera. Anyway, really nicely done. And you're going to see in here that sometimes when you go through these images, and if you go search a hashtag on Twitter or Instagram, sometimes images come out sharp and they look good, and you can certainly plan on that if you understand distance and how your lens works, even if you're not using the viewfinder, and you can understand how light works, and you see some things that are sharp. This picture of the pigeons is really nicely done. And then sometimes it's just a little bit off. And I think this one from Damon Johnston is really nice too. It has a weird blur to it. Again, it has a plasticky lens kind of feel. But don't worry about being in focus. We're not striving for perfection on these. We're striving for something that's interesting that we can learn from and we might surprise ourselves with. And I think that's a really good example of that. Another image that I want to show you, this is from Tom, who goes by Bikezilla, and I've known Tom for a long time. We've been online buddies, and he did another still life thing with these theater masks, and I think it's, again, really nicely done. And so it's really cool to see the range of work that people are submitting. Sometimes it's really adventurous, it's really daring, it's really abstract, and then sometimes it's more conventional. But again, I guess this is the awesome thing about photography is we have all these different ways that we can communicate and see things, and there's such a range to just the idea of communicating something visually that I think works so well. One last one I want to share with you guys. This is from Raphael D Swift, who I know on Twitter. And this is another one that caught my eye the other day when he submitted it. And I think it's really interesting because this is actually somewhat of a challenging lighting condition to be in. And I don't know if Raphael, if he set it up to be that way or if he was adapting to it. But either way, when you limit yourself to one type of camera setting, you have extreme highlights in this picture from the snow in the back, and then you have the shadows from being under this tent structure with the pile of wood to the right. Anyway, really nicely done. And I think not only can we learn from our own work on these, but we can also learn from what other people are submitting as well. And that's the whole idea and why I want you guys to be social with your submissions. People still ask me, can I just email you my work? And the answer is no. I want you to share your work. I want you to be part of the community, and I want you to mean, certainly it would be easier on me, but I'm not looking for easy on me. I'm looking for something that we can all learn from. And so I think this is the most advantageous way to do that. So anyway, I want to thank everybody who has submitted work so far. I will do one of those videos where I set everybody to music and we put a whole bunch of these in. So make sure that you submit your work this week. And so today is December 3rd, I believe, 2018. Yeah, December 3rd. So by the end of the week, have your images in, like by Friday or something. I'm actually going out of town this weekend, so when I get back, I'll put that video together, and in the next couple days, I will have your next photo assignment. And so anyway, if you got any questions, drop them below. Until the next video, I will see you guys then. Later.